According to a Brookings Institute study, 36 million Americans are at high risk for losing their jobs to automation, to robotics, artificial intelligence. And according to the McKinsey Global Institute, 73 million U.S. jobs could be replaced by artificial intelligence by 2030. That's more than 40% of the current U.S. labor force, 163 million people. Those numbers are in addition, of course, to the millions of Americans who've lost their jobs already because of robotics and automation. Joining us tonight, Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee, the House Freedom Caucus, co-chair of the Border Security Caucus. First, Congressman, good to see you. And secondly, before we get into border issues and other matters, let me get your reaction to the report of the Brookings Institute showing that many Americans whose jobs are at risk. Do you ever hear anybody talking about it in quantified terms on Capitol Hill? Because I don't. I hear all of the lobbyists who surround you talking about, oh, we've got to have more cheap labor. What do you hear?
Lou, I'm hearing the same thing you are, which is nothing about the automation issue and nothing about getting more cheap. I hear lots about getting more cheap labor in the country, but I'll tell you, I don't hear enough about how we can protect and help our American workers. And that's what I find to be greatly dismaying to me as I consider what we don't consider on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, it is a strange thing that the Chamber of Commerce puts out report after report about how much more illegal labor, cheap labor, and I say illegal because they are, of course, calling for open borders, which makes it quite easy for illegal labor, and it's not coincidental that it is easier to cross that border, particularly from Mexico. I want to ask you, the President of the United States is doing everything he can. He's building parts of the wall. He's got he's got some of the money, not most of the money, to build that wall. He is using tariffs to demand cooperation with neighboring countries in the region, whether it be Mexico or Guatemala. And he can't even get his own caucus to stand up and cheer him for what he is doing for the American worker, because he is the only one. I mean, the only American, forget policies, makers, lawmakers. He is the only American, forget American official, American leader, President of the United States, the only American standing up for the American worker.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I see him standing in the breach, because if you just take the border issue itself, he's fighting, we fight this incessant battle on people who don't want us to build a fence. They don't want us to enforce our laws. I mean, Lou, think of that. I never could imagine a time in my life when we have people sitting in the United States Congress advising constituents to not follow the United States laws. We've got sanctuary cities and counties. All of these types of things send a message that we're a lawless, anarchical country. And you've got Donald Trump as President of the United States saying, look, we are the best country in the world. We can be great. We can be truly great for as long as we choose to be great. But we're not choosing to be great right now. We're actually choosing to surrender and give up on these issues. Well, thank God it's not the choice.
It's not the choice of all Americans, whether we are a nation to be great, to be restored to greatness. It is the choice of the president. He is almost single-handedly, with his force of will, moving us toward a brighter future, and right. American workers, working families. As we, it's a report after report. Today, it is that Tim Cook is selling millions of dollars in stock as his company is beset by great jeopardy in China, where he has built hundreds of thousands of jobs for the Chinese and has created certainly some jobs in the United States, but hardly on anything, nothing like on parity with the jobs that have been created in China by his company.
That's exactly right, and that's part of the problem of the the policies of the previous generation has been to see outsourcing of millions of jobs, American jobs, overseas. And now when you see China's having economic problems. They are a communist country. They're an authoritarian dictatorship. And the reality is, sooner or later, there's a comeuppance when you're doing business with a country like that. And so there's difficulties. And now we should try to repatriate these, and that's what Donald Trump's been trying to do. And it's going to take some while to normalize again the American manufacturing jobs that should be coming back, the construction jobs, the ag jobs. All of these jobs should be coming back to the United States, and they are coming back. There's a company bringing back 1,000 jobs. Yeah, thanks to the president. There's a company coming back with 1,000 jobs to this valley because of the president of the United States.
And that story is being replicated across the country. Let's turn to James Comey. And
do we have to?
Well, we don't have to, but I think we should.
Right.
It is a story of disgrace, dishonor for a storied agency, a Justice Department that once was principled, led by officials who had the interest of the nation at heart. It is, to me, dismaying to look at this report. This Office of the Inspector General. It is turgid. It is obfuscatory. It is a shameful document to me because it doesn't even deal with what it describes, that is, the legal impact and consequence of a man, James Comey, who not only disgraced himself, but attempted to, through his actions, artifice and fraud, to unseat a president of the United States.
Exactly right. I mean, I look at James Comey and I say, I've never seen anybody more self-serving with a God complex like this gentleman. This guy, he's basically, as you start going through this, you find that even the people that were in agreement with him politically, that were actually probably in on this deal to try to unseat President Trump and try to force him out of office ultimately, they didn't even know everything that this guy was doing, that he was taking these memos that he said were his personal property, he was taking them home, that he was actually distributing them to a New York Times reporter to manipulate the forcing of a special counsel appointment. This is what James Comey did. This is what he did in a way that as you read this and you read his own words that are quoted in here, I come across saying, here's a guy who just really has no sense of shame. No sense of shame.
This guy had enablers, co-conspirators, accomplices, and they were sworn servants of the American people. And they behaved in the most dishonorable fashion imaginable, and to this point have not been held to account. Congressman, as you say, difficult to discuss it because it is so, it is just gut-wrenching to think that what the FBI's leadership has become, what the agency itself has descended to. Congressman Andy Biggs, good to have you with us. Thanks so much.